The security line at Dallas-Fort Worth buzzed with the usual Tuesday morning chaos. Business travelers checking emails, families herding kids, and flight announcements echoing overhead. Malik Jeremiah Barnes, just 15, moved quietly through it all. He wore a faded gray hoodie, jeans, and sneakers that had clearly seen better days. His expression was calm, almost unreadable. In one hand, he held a boarding pass for Seat 3A, first class. In the other, a black backpack, ordinary, except for the tiny lens hidden near the zipper. He said nothing as he passed through TSA, his headphones dangling around his neck. He had no suitcase, just the backpack and the weight of what he was there to do. As he boarded Flight 622 to Washington, D.C., Malik barely glanced at the other passengers. The man in a navy suit scrolling through stock prices. The woman with oversized sunglasses speaking fast in Italian. None of them noticed him. Until he reached 3A. He sat, pulled out his tablet, and slipped on his headphones. The hum of the cabin was oddly comforting. This was the easy part. "Excuse me," a sharp voice broke through. "That seat isn't yours." Malik looked up. The woman standing before him was white, in her early 40s, with blonde hair tied back in a tight bun. Her name tag read Tricia Caldwell, Senior Flight Attendant. She was holding a tray of champagne glasses, but her attention was fully on Malik. "I'm sorry," he said politely. "I said that seat's not yours," Tricia repeated, slower this time, like she was speaking to someone who didn't understand English. "Coach is that way." Malik reached into his pocket and pulled out his boarding pass. "I think it is. 3AC. Tricia didn't even glance at the pass. Her smile was tight and unkind. "Honey, I've been doing this job for 20 years. I know when something's off. Let's not make a scene. Why don't you just come with me and we'll sort this out quietly, okay?" "I'm really fine here," Malik said, his voice still calm, though his stomach had started to tighten. Tricia leaned in, lowering her voice. "Listen. You're clearly in the wrong seat, and we have boarding to finish. Don't make me get the captain involved." A few passengers began to watch. An older man 2 rows back tilted his head, curious. A woman across the aisle looked down, pretending not to see. Malik opened his mouth, but Tricia didn't wait. She reached down and grabbed him firmly by the arm. "Up. Now." He stood, stiffly, his backpack clutched to his chest. "You'll wait in the back until I figure out where you're actually supposed to be," she snapped, already turning toward the rear of the plane. Probably an honest mistake. As they walked past the rows of passengers, Malik's face burned. Not with anger, not yet, but with something worse. Shame. His legs felt heavy as she led him past dozens of silent faces, some watching, some pretending not to. No one said a word. She pointed to a window seat in the last row, near the lavatory. "Sit." Malik sat. Tricia walked away briskly, no further explanation. He stared out the window for a moment, then quietly pulled out his phone and typed a short message. "It's happening. She pulled me to the back. You were right." He hit send. No one around him knew that the message wasn't going to a friend, or even to his father. It went to a secure server managed by a single assistant in Maurice Barnes's private office. 6 minutes passed. Up in the cockpit, Captain Daniel Hawthorne was mid-checklist when the call came through. He frowned, put the headset on, and listened. His hand froze over the throttle. "Say that again," he said, his voice suddenly sharper. He turned to his first officer, pale. "We've got a situation." Moments later, the aircraft doors remained open, though boarding had finished. Tricia, confused, was called up to the cockpit. Passengers began whispering. A woman pulled out her phone and started recording, just as a man in a dark Atlantic West blazer rushed down the jet bridge. Back in the last row, Malik sat still, staring ahead, the phone in his hand. He didn't smile. He didn't look smug. He looked tired. And maybe just a little bit sad. Because no matter how prepared he'd been, it still hurt. When Tricia Caldwell was summoned to the cockpit, she assumed it was for a routine matter, perhaps a change in catering orders or an issue with passenger count. She adjusted her blazer, smoothed her expression, and walked forward with the confident gait of someone who believed she was firmly in the right. Captain Daniel Hawthorne stood inside the cockpit doorway, his expression unreadable. "Tricia," he said calmly. "Close the door, please." She hesitated, sensing something off, then pulled the cockpit door shut behind her. "You moved a passenger from first class?" he asked without preamble. "Yes." A young boy who was clearly confused about his seat assignment. "I escorted him to the back so he wouldn't disturb other passengers." He didn't even argue. "Why?" Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. "Did you check his boarding pass?" "I didn't need to," she said, arms folding across her chest. "Come on, Dan. He's a kid. Alone. Wearing, well, not exactly first-class attire. It was obvious he was in the wrong place. I was trying to avoid a scene." Daniel took a breath. "His name is Malik Jeremiah Barnes. Does that name ring any bells?" She blinked. "No. Should it?" He leaned forward slightly. "He's the son of Maurice Barnes." There was a pause, brief but heavy. Tricia tilted her head. "Wait. That Maurice Barnes? As in the CEO?" "Yes." Tricia's lips parted, but no words came. Her throat tightened. Daniel continued, each word measured. This flight was being monitored. That boy was intentionally placed in first class without fanfare. It was a test. Of us. Of our professionalism. Of how we treat passengers when no one's watching. The silence was suffocating. "I didn't know," Tricia murmured, now visibly pale. "You didn't ask," he corrected. "You assumed. And now the company is in full damage control mode. Legal, PR, HR, everyone." He stepped back, the cool professionalism returning to his tone. "An executive is on the jet bridge now. You'll deplane before we push back." "Wait, are you grounding me?" "You're being removed from the flight. Pending investigation." She sputtered. "This is insane. I've been with this airline for 20 years. I've trained half the staff here. You think I did this maliciously?" "I think perception is reality, Tricia. And right now, a teenage black boy was humiliated in front of an entire cabin. That's the story already making its way online." Her voice grew shrill. "Someone's recording?" "Yes. A passenger in 4D has already uploaded a clip. It's spreading fast." Her hands trembled as she reached for the door. "This is ridiculous." Daniel didn't reply. In the back of the plane, Malik remained seated, eyes focused on the safety card in the seat pocket. He wasn't reading it. His mind was elsewhere. The phone in his hand buzzed softly with a message. "You did well. Stay seated. We're handling it now." He closed his eyes for a second. He hadn't cried. Not yet. But the sting in his chest wasn't going away. He'd known this might happen. His father had warned him, it might not be loud. It might not be obvious. But if they treat you like you don't belong, you'll feel it in your bones. He had. The whispering had grown around him. Some passengers looked back toward him now. Others avoided eye contact. Then came the tap on his shoulder. It was a tall black man in a slim suit, Atlantic West badge clipped to his collar. His voice was low, respectful. "Mr. Barnes, I'd like to escort you back to your assigned seat." Malik stood, and the man extended his hand gently, palm up, not to grab, but to guide. The entire plane seemed to shift its weight as Malik walked back up the aisle, this time alone, his head high. Some passengers watched. A few looked away in shame. One woman offered a small smile, the kind people give when they realize too late that they should have spoken up. As he reached seat 3A again, the man stepped aside. "Would you like anything before takeoff, sir?" Malik shook his head. "No. Thank you." He sat, pulled out his tablet, reinserted his headphones. But the calm was different now. He could hear the murmurs, the unfolding drama just beyond the cockpit, the sudden presence of uniformed airport officials, the hiss of confusion from passengers watching Tricia Caldwell, now flustered, eyes red, being escorted off the aircraft. For the first time, Malik looked out the window not as a passive observer, but as someone aware of his place and his power. He didn't smile. He just pressed play on a recording stored safely in his camera app, the one that started at the boarding door, and captured everything. The aircraft finally pushed back from the gate, nearly 30 minutes behind schedule. No one complained, not allowed, at least. The cabin was heavy with a different kind of tension now, the kind that lingers when something unspoken has just occurred. The hum of engines was overlaid with whispers, glances, and the occasional not-so-subtle swipe of a phone screen. In seat 3A, Malik sat quietly. Headphones on. Tablet dark. He wasn't watching anything. He was listening, not to music, but to every sound around him. He didn't need to record anymore. Everything that mattered had already been captured. He glanced down at the small screen in his hand and opened the video file. The image was clear, the carpeted jet bridge. His feet walking slowly toward the first-class cabin. Then Trisha Caldwell's voice, that slight edge, the patronizing tone. The moment she grabbed his arm. The silence of those watching. He tapped the screen. Another window opened. A secure app with only one button, upload. He hesitated, then pressed it. By the time Flight 622 reached cruising altitude, the video had already been seen by over 1 million people. It began circulating on X, formerly Twitter, then spread to Instagram and TikTok. Major news outlets picked it up within the hour. The caption was simple: "This is how Atlantic West treats black youth in first class." The footage hit a nerve, not just because of the racial profiling, but because of who Malik was. It didn't take long for people to put the pieces together. An anonymous account tweeted, "Malik Barnes is the son of Maurice Barnes, the CEO of Atlantic West Airlines. And he was testing his own company." That single tweet lit the match. Back in the Atlantic West headquarters in Chicago, chaos was already underway. Phones rang non-stop. The PR director, Layla Grant, stared at the video in horror. "He recorded the whole thing?" she asked, almost in disbelief. Her assistant nodded. "From start to finish. And now it's everywhere. Where's Maurice?" "In transit. He's flying into DC to meet the flight. He knew this might happen. He told us not to interfere." Layla's stomach twisted. She admired Maurice Barnes, respected his vision, his silence, the way he didn't need cameras or applause. But this was something else. This was personal and deliberate. 37,000 feet above the ground, Malik finally took off his headphones and leaned back. A flight attendant, not Trisha, of course, but a younger black woman named Erin, approached with a soft smile. "Mr. Barnes, would you like anything to eat?" He shook his head. "I'm okay. Thank you." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "I saw the video." Malik looked up, eyes steady. "I just wanted to say, what you did, that took guts." He nodded, not saying anything at first. Then, "It wasn't just me." She smiled again, then left him in peace. He stared out the window. The clouds below looked soft and unreal. But the world outside, the one waiting for him, was sharper than ever. In Washington, D.C., the arrival gate at Reagan National was unusually crowded. Cameras. Reporters. Atlantic West staff in suits and tense expressions. And at the center, waiting near the gate doors with arms folded, was Maurice Barnes. Tall. Imposing. Silent. When Malik stepped off the jet bridge, backpack slung over his shoulder, their eyes met. Maurice didn't move. Neither did Malik. Then, slowly, father and son walked toward each other. No hug. No dramatic scene. Just a moment of quiet recognition. "You okay?" Maurice asked. Malik nodded. "Yeah." "You recorded it?" "Every second." Maurice gave a single nod. Then, after a pause, "It's time." They turned toward the cameras. The world wanted answers, and the Barnes men were ready to give them. The press conference was scheduled for 4 p.m. Eastern Time, just hours after Flight 622 touched down. By then, the video had amassed nearly 12 million views across platforms, and the Atlantic West Board of Directors had held 2 emergency calls. The narrative had already escaped their control. The conference room at the Reagan National Airport's VIP terminal was packed. Journalists, cameras, legal advisors, airline staff, and a growing number of protesters outside holding signs, "We belong in first class too," profiling in the skies, "Listen to Malik." At the center of it all stood Maurice Barnes, composed as ever, wearing a charcoal gray suit, his hands loosely folded. Next to him, Malik, now without his hoodie, dressed in a crisp button-down shirt someone had given him on the plane, stood straight, chin high, eyes focused. Maurice stepped up to the podium. The flash of cameras was relentless. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice deep and unwavering. "My name is Maurice Barnes. I am the founder and CEO of Atlantic West Airlines. I come to you today not as a corporate executive, but as a father." A murmur rolled through the room. He glanced at Malik, then back to the crowd. "This morning, my 15-year-old son boarded one of our aircraft in Dallas-Fort Worth. He held a valid first-class ticket. He was dressed modestly. He didn't identify himself. He didn't expect special treatment. He expected equal treatment." Morris's tone didn't rise. He didn't need volume. The weight of his words did the work. What he received instead was a public humiliation. A judgment based on appearance. A denial of dignity. My son was profiled, not because he misbehaved, but because someone decided he didn't look like he belonged. Somewhere in the back, a reporter cleared her throat, preparing to ask a question. Maurice raised one hand, silencing the room gently. "I sent Malik on that flight for a reason. Not because I wanted to test an employee, but because I wanted to test the culture I helped build. Atlantic West markets itself as progressive, inclusive, forward-thinking. But values don't exist in slogans. They exist in moments, in choices, in silence, or in action." He paused again. Every lens in the room stayed fixed on him. "The footage you saw? My son recorded that himself. He carried a camera in his backpack, not to entrap, but to document. I authorized its release. Because it's time we stop pretending this doesn't happen in our boardrooms, in our airports, on our planes." Next to him, Malik remained silent, composed. But his hands, resting by his sides, were trembling slightly. Maurice finally gestured toward his son. "Malik has nothing to say to you today. Because he said enough simply by existing in that seat. But I do have something to say to Trisha Caldwell." The room leaned forward. "You failed him. Not because of one decision, but because of every assumption behind it. I don't know if you meant to hurt him. I don't care. Intent does not erase impact." A heavy silence filled the space. "I've placed you on indefinite suspension. Not because of my anger as a father, but because of my responsibility as a leader. And because we cannot lead a company that serves the public while ignoring how we treat the people who reflect that public." He stepped back from the podium. For the first time, Malik looked out over the crowd. A few journalists raised hands. Maurice nodded toward one. "Mr. Barnes," the woman asked, "is this the first time you've done something like this, sending your son to test your own airline?" "No," Maurice replied. "But it's the first time it broke my heart." By that evening, Atlantic West stock had dipped 3.8%. The company issued a formal apology across all social channels. Trisha Caldwell's face was on every major news network. She declined all interviews. In her apartment in Houston, she sat alone, watching herself on screen. The clip played again and again. Her face, her voice, the moment her hand grabbed Malik's arm. She looked at her reflection in the black TV screen when it ended. For the first time, she didn't recognize the person staring back. Outside, protesters gathered near Atlantic West's downtown office tower. Among them were students, activists, parents, people who had been Malik, in stores, in classrooms, in airports. People who understood humiliation that doesn't leave bruises. But change doesn't come from shame alone. It comes from truth. And truth had finally taken flight. 3 weeks later, Malik stood on a small stage in the auditorium of Thurgood Marshall High School in Washington, D.C., surrounded by peers who now saw him not just as the quiet boy from Dallas, but as a national voice. Not a hero, he didn't want that, but something harder to ignore, a mirror. His father stood off to the side, hands in his pockets, letting Malik own the moment. A local nonprofit had organized the event, Flight for Justice, they called it. What started as an isolated incident had sparked a national conversation about bias in elite spaces, about the subtle ways people are told they don't belong, about how easy it is to look away when it's happening to someone else. Malik stepped up to the mic. "I didn't plan to be here," he began. "When I boarded that flight, I wasn't trying to make a statement. I just wanted to see how people would treat me, without knowing who I was." He looked out at the crowd, students, teachers, activists, airline workers, all seated in silence. "And what I learned is that sometimes, it doesn't matter who you are. If you look a certain way, people decide your story before you get to tell it." He paused, breathing slowly. "But I also learned that the story doesn't have to end there." Applause broke out, soft at first, then growing. Back at Atlantic West headquarters, policies had shifted. Training programs were rewritten. A new department, Equity in Flight, was created, with Malik's video used as core training material for every new hire. Trisha Caldwell remained suspended. She requested a private meeting with Maurice Barnes but received no reply. Instead, she received a letter, not from Maurice, but from Malik. It was only 3 lines. "I don't hate you. I just hope the next time you see a kid like me, you'll remember I had a name." On a warm spring morning, Malik and his father boarded a different flight. No cameras, no tests, no message to prove. This time, they flew coach, together. Side by side, laughing softly as they passed a shared packet of pretzels. And when the flight attendant approached and asked, without assumption, "Can I get you both anything?" Malik smiled. He didn't need anything. He belonged.